Hello and welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm Pat Riley. Thank you for joining us. We have a really important topic for today's program, and I would like to welcome our guests. We have Priscilla Mattin, who's an entomologist with Bristol County Mosquito Control, and Gail Noons, a registered nurse, and our nurse here at the Raynham Middle School. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you, Pat, for having us.
Gail, we're going to talk actually about mosquito control, obviously, and how people can protect themselves. Really important. We're heading into the summer seasons. Kids are on summer vacation, and kids and parents need to know, as well as people in the community. Gail, tell us about your role in all of this.
That's correct, Pat. It is a very important, actually, problem right here in Raynham, and because of the mosquito problem that's been personally affected here to the residents in Raynham, I felt strongly to get some more information. So I contacted the Bristol County Mosquito Control back in early May, and Priscilla was kind enough to offer to come out here to the Raynham Middle School initially, and then I said, I stretched it, okay, how about the Merrill? And then I pushed it even further, how about the La Liberty? So she was kind enough to dedicate an entire day here to the three schools to talk about mosquito prevention and protection for the students, and hopefully for them to relay the message back to their families at home. And so she was kind enough to come. I believe that was June 6th or 7th, I believe it was.
And it was excellent presentations, I understand.
It was very well received. Excellent questions from the students. I think they were very well behaved here at our middle school. A wide variety of questions. Some of them were quite pointed, to be honest with you, and Priscilla did an excellent job in answering them.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Priscilla, it was it last year when we had the initial meeting here at the Raynham Middle School, and you came representing Bristol County Mosquito Control, and we had talked at that point, and you had offered that you will go into schools and educate children. And the best thing about educating the children too, as we had discussed, is they take that information home to their parents, and just like we've done in the past with fire prevention, it really gets the word out through the community. So it's a really good approach.
Absolutely. I think that the kids are a wonderful way to get information to the families, because kids love to share the information that they know. They love to tell parents and family members and siblings what they learned. So what I tried to do was keep it basic, try to get it so that way it would be something that would stick in their head. Like we all remember stop, drop, and roll for fire prevention.
Exactly.
Why I tried to keep on with the 5 Ds, so that the kids would hopefully bring back something that they could remember that's a little catchy, and hopefully they would help protect themselves against mosquito bites.
And what are the 5 Ds?
The 5 Ds are dusk, dawn, dress, deet, and drain. And we will explain a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, you were nice enough to bring the presentation with you, and maybe we can go through that, and then if we have more questions at that point, we can chat some more.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Terrific.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about mosquitoes and what's important about mosquitoes. So on the next slide, I want to express that there are 51 different types of mosquitoes right here in Massachusetts. And a lot of people don't think that there's quite that many types of mosquitoes, which is what I do as the entomologist. I look at these different types of mosquitoes to try to figure out which ones are important. And they're involved in a variety of different types of diseases, like West Nile or Triple E, which is Eastern equine encephalitis, but they also can transmit dog heartworm to our pets. So mosquitoes are really important. What we like to talk about on the next slide will be the 5 Ds of protection, like we talked about. Dusk, meaning when the sun is going down, dawn, when the sun comes up, that's when mosquitoes are actually most active. These are the times of day when you want to try to avoid being outside. Dress, so wear clothes that covers yourself. And we were just talking about that in terms of sun protection as well, that it's really important to dress appropriately. The more skin that you can cover with your clothes, long sleeves, long pants, the less chance you'll have of getting bit by a mosquito. Things like DEET or other repellents that you can use that will help prevent mosquito bites and make you less attractive. And then drain. Dumping that standing water around your property is also really important.
Is DEET really what you need to use, Priscilla? I mean, because there are other different brands and so forth, but it has to have the DEET in it.
It doesn't have to have the DEET. We
Okay.
recommend those that are recommended by the Center for Disease Control.
Okay.
And there are a couple of other products. DEET is just the most common product
Okay.
that most of us know and most of us feel most comfortable with in terms of using. We're going to talk about, on the next slide, the life cycle of the mosquito. So the mosquito starts by the female laying her eggs. She'll lay about 300 eggs from one blood meal. About half will be male, half will be female. These eggs are usually laid on water or very close to water. Some eggs have to actually dry down and then get flooded in order for the eggs to hatch. And this is one of the reasons why mosquitoes can last for years, because all the eggs don't necessarily hatch at once. Then you have the larval stage. This stage does have to stay in water. So anywhere that you have standing water, which means water that's not moving. So you're not going to find mosquitoes larvae in moving water such as rivers or streams or the ocean. You won't find them there. So if you have standing water around your property, put fish in it. If you say you have a swimming pool that you're not going to take care of, fish are a great way to control mosquito larvae.
Really?
Or even something as simple as a fountain. Something that gets the water moving just a little bit will help prevent those mosquitoes from using that water in order to breed. The larvae actually breathe air, so they need to come back to the surface of the water to breathe and then being able to get back down to the bottom in order to feed on the stuff that's usually at the bottom of the water. So therefore, really deep water does not have mosquito larvae in it. So we're talking about shorter, maybe 2 feet or so less of water is where you're going to find your mosquito larvae. The next stage is the pupal stage. This is very similar to that caterpillar cocoon stage where the mosquito is changing into the adult that we know about, and then the adult will emerge out of the water. Depending on the temperature, but given in summer, usually it takes anywhere from 10 to 15 days for that mosquito to go from an egg to an adult, which is important because then that will help tell you when you need to dump that standing water around your property. When we talk about adults, on the next slide, we will see, when we talk about some of the larval habitat, these are the places that we as mosquito control people are most concerned about. These larger areas, after this rain that we just got, flooding in ditches, on roadside ditches will be great. Flooding of freshwater swamps, our cedar swamps that we have right here in Raynham, the whole Hockomock Swamp Complex is really important for triple E, which is why we tend to have more triple E in this area. These are all important areas. But on the next slide, we'll talk about where you can find it right around your house. When we ask you to dump that standing water, to drain that standing water, what are we looking for? We're talking about things like your swimming pool that you may not have been able to uncover this year or may not have been able to treat this year. Stuff like that. Tires are a great place for mosquito larvae, and almost everybody has a tire lying around their house. And there's no way to place a tire where it doesn't hold water, whether it's on its side or on its standing upright. So it's really important to try to get rid of those tires. Bird baths, again, great to have. Just want to dump them out. Buckets and other random stuff. And what we find a lot is with kiddie pools. Now, a lot of people use their kiddie pools for their kids, so they tend to dump them out and they tend to be fine. However, some people use their kiddie pools for their pet, and they don't dump the water out all that often, and this is a great place for mosquitoes to grow. So it's great if you remember to dump out your kiddie pool and then just refill it every couple of days. About 5 days or so would be a great time, and then you'll really prevent mosquitoes right in your own backyard. So the next slide talks about the difference between a male and a female. The females and males have different antennae. So I think if you click the button, you'll see that the male antennae are fuzzy and the female antennae are not fuzzy. And that's the easiest way for us to tell the difference between a male and a female. And that was one of the ways that we used to identify our mosquitoes. So the female and male, the males only really live for a short period of time in order to mate. However, the females, depending on the species, can live for quite a long time. And this is one of the things that's important. One of the mosquitoes that we feel is important in triple E usually emerges around the 4th of July, so we're starting to find them now in our traps, but they'll live all the way to Labor Day.
Wow.
So it's a very successful mosquito. A lot of people believe that mosquitoes only live for a short period of time,
Right.
but some actually do live for quite a bit of time.
And is it true that they can travel quite a distance?
Yes, I do.
It's amazing.
I have a slide on that as well, of how far mosquitoes can travel. So what we do is when we look at our mosquitoes, we try to see, does it look like it's an older mosquito? Does she look a little beat up? Or does she look pristine, like she just emerged? And the age has a lot to do with how dangerous they are. The more times that they come in contact with a blood meal, the better chance they have of coming in contact with a virus. So an older mosquito is a deadly mosquito.
Do they both, male and female, both bite?
We will see that, I think, on the next slide.
Ahead.
So what do mosquitoes eat? All mosquitoes need nectar. They need sugar from either plants or rotten fruit or something in order to fly around. However, only the female bites, and she only takes that blood meal so she can have extra protein so she can lay her eggs. That's the only reason why she will bite. So on the next slide, we'll discuss what do they eat. So what is for dinner for a mosquito? So we have 51 different types of mosquitoes, and they actually feed on a variety of different things. Of course, the ones that are important to us feed on us and other mammals, but in reality, of the 51 different types, they feed on all sorts of things. There's a certain group that only feed on amphibians and frogs, some feed on turtles, some will feed on, of course, people, and some will feed on just birds. And what we look at as an entomologist and at Bristol County is we look at those mosquitoes that are not so picky, that will feed on that bird that one time in order to get the virus, but then will also feed on a person or a horse or another mammal and pass on that virus. So on the next slide, we talk about that. How far do mosquitoes fly? And I think that this is really important because, like you said, Pat, not a lot of people realize. Certainly if you are breeding mosquitoes in your backyard, then you are feeding them. We like to say if you're breeding them, you're probably feeding them. They're not going to go very far. But there are certainly mosquitoes that will fly very, very far, up to 15 miles away. Wow. You know, average is about 5 or so, but then certain mosquitoes will certainly fly far away. This is what brings into effect that really important idea of just because one town may be at a higher risk than another town doesn't necessarily mean that it's safer in another town.
Right.
The Department of Public Health takes that into consideration when they put out their risk maps, because it's very important for people to know that if it's high in Raynham, it can also be high in your town, because mosquitoes do not respect boundaries and they fly all over. So it's really important that people take that into consideration. When you have something as large as the Hockomock that includes, you know, Plymouth County as well as Bristol County, it can affect a wide area. So it's really important for people to look at the risk and when they're traveling to take that into consideration, because the risk is far different than just your backyard. The next slide, please. So what I do is I catch those mosquitoes. I go and I use different types of traps in all over our county. Plymouth County does the same, as well as the Mass Department of Public Health. And we catch these different types of mosquitoes. We identify them, and then we send them off to the state to be tested for West Nile and Tripoli. We also use it to figure out what is the population doing. Is it a bad year? What's going on? Do we have a lot of human biting mosquitoes out there? Even if they don't have virus, it means that there's going to be more of a nuisance. So it's really important for us to keep an eye on that. So on the next slide, we're back to those 5 Ds of protection. So dusk, dawn, dress, deet, drain, chuck it or check it. This is kind of my cute little saying. If you're going to keep it, that's fine. Keep that pot you might have outside. Keep that bird bath you might have outside. But just check it and make sure that it's working for you and not breeding mosquitoes. If you're not going to keep it, then throw it away. Get rid of it. There's no reason to keep that tire in your yard unless you're going to use it for something. The next slide talks about what does those mean. So we're trying to avoid activity at dusk and dawn. This is when mosquitoes are most active, is at dusk and dawn. We have very few mosquitoes actually in Massachusetts that feed during the day, but they will feed if you're in the shade along the tree lines, which is why we get concerned about things like outdoor activities in, say, September. Not so much about the kids that are on the field playing the sports, but those parents that are sitting in the stands, their siblings that are playing. You know, those are the ones that are probably more at risk than those that are actually on the field. So that's why we try to make sure that we pay attention to those types of activities. And then dress. We want you to wear long sleeves, long pants when outdoors. So I already know, because I say it all the time, when a kid's out, they're out at dusk and dawn, right? It's when they have to go out for school and when they're out of school. So of course you're not going to be able to avoid activity because you want your kids to be outside.
Right.
And dressing. Well, maybe on a day like today we could get away with it, but when it was 90 degrees, nobody wants to wear long sleeves, long pants. But if you can bring something, maybe a light sweatshirt or a light jacket or something, light colored clothing, loose fitting clothing is very important and really will help prevent those mosquitoes from biting you. And then on the next slide, we talk about those repellents. So the Center for Disease Control recommends DEET, recommends picaridin, oil of lemon eucalyptus, and permethrin is a very good. There's a whole list on the Center for Disease Control's website of of repellents that they recommend. What's important about DEET is very similar to sunscreen, is that the amount of DEET does not mean you'll be protected better, it just represents how long you'll be protected. Okay. So it's very important always to read the label and follow the label because you need to reapply. In most situations, you may need to reapply when you're outside and a lot of people don't. And it's that reapplying that gets you to have more success using your repellent. Permethrin is a great product. You do not spray it on you. It's not a contact. You spray it on your clothes. So we recommend it because it's great for ticks as well. So you spray it on, say, your sweatshirt. Say you have a work sweatshirt. Say you have work boots. Say your kids have play sneakers. Or you are a gardener and you have gardening gloves. You spray it on that when they're not on you. You let it dry. And then it gives you 6 weeks of protection.
Really?
Wow. And it's great because it's in the clothes. You can actually wash your clothes and it will still work. It's very similar. It's the same product that they use when they use soldiers' outfits and the uniforms that they have that are embedded with permethrin, or like bed nets that they use to help control mosquitoes. So it's a great product. It's just not a skin applicated product. So you just
Which
have
could
to
be better for anybody that's concerned about skin allergies or anything like
absolutely,
that.
Absolutely. And the thing about DEET, like you had mentioned,
athletes.
Yes.
right? You know, is what do you feel? You know, DEET is probably one of the most tested products. I mean, think of how many uses of DEET there are, and how many people report any adverse incidents.
And it's been used for such a long time.
Exactly,
too.
exactly. So it is a great product, but they have now come out with new products because, as you can see, even DEET has come out with new products because people don't like the oily feeling or the smell or something. So there's a lot of different products that contain DEET, and but you probably don't need a high concentration of DEET. Really read the label and see how long you're going to be out, and that'll help tell you how long you need to have it. So there are a few products that you can use.
What about, I've seen they also sometimes have something that you can put on your clothes or some kind of...
Right, the clip, the off clip.
Does that work?
I haven't tried it myself, but I have a good authority, somebody that I trusted that had tried it, and he believes that it did work. But he says you have to be very careful of the battery. Once the battery starts to go, the fan dies down, and then he sensed that there was a difference. I think everybody's attracted by mosquitoes differently.
Yes.
So certain people get bit by mosquitoes all the time, and you can be sitting next to somebody else that never gets bit by mosquitoes. So
it's amazing.
It is different. It has a lot to do with body chemistry and what they're attracted to. So one of those problems that we have is, we like to say, if you're getting bit by mosquitoes, it's probably time to go in. What would be the first thing we would say, for the ways to avoid mosquito bites? If you're sitting outside and mosquitoes are attracted to you, time to move everybody inside. Of course, children may not be as attractive, or your child may not be as attractive as you, so you can't just use that. You should just know that mosquitoes are present, and therefore try to do what you can to avoid those mosquito bites.
You mentioned as early as the 4th of July. Is it likely to have mosquitoes that are carrying a virus at that point? I mean, we usually hear about it later in the season.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we look at. The earliest that we found EEE in a mosquito in Massachusetts was right around the 4th of July, a little bit before the 4th of July in late June. That usually signals that it's going to be a bad year. So we do. Usually you're correct. It happens mid-July, and then we kind of know, well, we're on schedule. Because the virus has to build up in the bird/mosquito population, and that's where we usually find the first set of virus isolations. For West Nile virus, again, it tends to be a late season. It tends to be in August, September time when we tend to find more West Nile virus. But we have found it as early as June. So it's one of those things where depending on what the population is showing us. Mosquito populations are very hard to predict because mosquitoes rely on rain. So if we get a very early season of mosquitoes, but then it gets very, very dry, we're going to have less mosquitoes. So in 2010, it started out as what we predicted to be a pretty usual season, but then all of a sudden it started to kick up very, very quickly. So we did not predict that. We did not know that all of a sudden there was going to be so much activity in mosquitoes. So it wasn't something that when we started there we predicted, okay, this is going to be one of those years. So sometimes things can change, unfortunately, really, really quickly, which is why it's important to listen to the Department of Public Health and listen to what they say when they start to put out these warnings, you know, to avoid outdoor activity or to cancel outdoor activity even.
And then you're stuck with it until you get a couple really good frosts that kill all the mosquitoes.
Right, and that's one of the things that's interesting is that it doesn't, of course it can't kill all the mosquitoes because then we would have no more mosquitoes.
Right, exactly. Right.
So what we say is that mosquitoes tend not to like to fly under about 55 degrees.
Okay.
So the mosquitoes will die once we get a frost. Some of those mosquitoes will overwinter in the egg stage, that dry down egg stage. Some overwinter in the larval stage. That's one of the ones that's important in the triple E cycle. In the swamps where it can snow and that'll be fine, or it can freeze and that'll be fine because they bury themselves down in the mud. But then we have those that overwinter as the adult. And those are the ones that we tend to see when we get that really warm spell. This year was in February. Remember we had those 80-degree and everybody started calling and saying, why are all these mosquitoes out? It was because these adults were coming out that had overwintered as adults. So what the frost does is kills off those mosquitoes that are not going to make it through the winter because they're an adult unless they're meant to go into hibernation. So, and then the last D that we talk about will be the drain. So it's chuck it or check it. All those places around your house, get rid of it if you don't need it, or just keep checking it and draining it every 5 or so days in order to prevent those mosquitoes from being right around your house. So again, we're going to go over the 5 Ds one more time. Dusk and dawn is the best time to avoid those activities when they're most active. Dress, long sleeves, long pants, a light jacket, something that protects you from mosquito bites, DEET or any other repellent that works to help make you less attractive to those mosquitoes, and then drain it by either chucking it or checking it. And then the last slide just has some contact information on it so that if people have any questions, they can either email me if they have a question, or there's some information there for making requests. This is for Bristol County, of course, only, but there's information that they can find on for Plymouth County as well.
Exactly, exactly. From a mosquito control perspective, Priscilla, why is it so difficult to control mosquitoes?
Well, I think what's difficult is that one is the larval stage, of course, would be the best place, right? Because you know you have them in the water, they're in one spot, you could probably control them. But it's very difficult to get into some of these areas. For instance, in the Hockomock Swamp, they live in crypts. They live underground in the water that's under these root masses. They're not easy to get to. Also, it's an acidic environment, which may or may not have an effect on a pesticide. Luckily for the products that we use, it doesn't. But it's also an area where it has a lot of diversity. So we have to be wary about where we make applications. So it gets very difficult to control the larval stage. Of course, once they're adults, they're flying all over the place. So, you know, it would be easy if we could target, say, the Hockomock and knew that they weren't going to get out to those surrounding areas. But we just can't. So it does make it very difficult in order to.
Is it true also that when you spray, you only kill the mosquitoes that are out and active, that the ones that may be, you know, under the ground or whatever, you can't reach? Anyway?
Right, right, and that's true. The product that we use only kills the mosquitoes it comes in contact with, and it does not stick around in the environment. And so that has a benefit, of course, for all those other creatures in the environment, but it also doesn't do as great of a job at killing the mosquitoes because it doesn't stick around. So it's really important that people are aware that even when we do an aerial application, it's very important that it does not reduce the risk to zero. There's always going to be a risk. We'll never kill all of the mosquitoes. So it's very important that people still continue to avoid mosquito bites.
And this area pretty much is the epicenter of mosquito activity, it seems like, for the world.
Unfortunately, it is. And actually, that's why the Taunton office was actually ever started. It started because the CDC came here in the 50s after the 1950s outbreak. We had an outbreak in the 30s, and then we had another outbreak in the 50s. And that is why the CDC came here and set up the encephalitis field station. There are more cases actually in Florida than there are in Massachusetts, but there tends to be more cases now in terms of this time, meaning in this century, not century, but you know, in this decade, it's more in Massachusetts than it is in Florida. Though overall, there's been more cases in Florida.
Very good. So really important to know that there isn't any really quick answer. People still need to do their own personal protection, Gail, and that's so important to get out to the kids and the parents.
Educate, and do the 5 Ds. We have to follow through with that: the dawn, dusk, dress, deet, and dump. You have to carry. She's absolutely correct. And when it gets to be fall, like I was saying, the athletes, if they spray themselves before they go, I love that. Permethrin. That's a wonderful idea. If the athletes could spray their uniforms before they go out for practice, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Is that readily available? Can you get that?
It is. It's usually in the camping section of your local stores, or it's possible that in a hardware store. But yes, the product name is Repel. The active ingredient is permethrin, but yes.
I think that would be a wonderful thing for them to do. Maybe we could tell the coaches.
Exactly, yeah, definitely. Anything we can do to, because obviously it is very serious.
Right.
Now, Bristol County Mosquito Control, you do a lot of testing, you do this, also you do spraying at times.
Yes. Yes, it's usually done by residential request. So an individual within Raynham or any of our towns can call us and ask us to make a application from the road, from our trucks. And then once we start finding virus, we tend to do large-scale areas in order to help knock down the mosquito population as best we can. And which is a reason why we have our traps, because we don't know that exact moment when a mosquito goes from a nuisance to a vector, to where it's just going to be a problem because it's annoying you, to where it could actually make you ill. And so that's why it's very important for us to keep an eye on that.
I know you've been, in Plymouth County Mosquito Control, extremely supportive and helpful for our school district during this past year, in the fall and so forth, whenever we requested spraying, on the grounds. We were very accommodating, so greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
It must be a fascinating job.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It has aspects of all different things, so that's why I love it. To be able to come here, talk to the public, to be able to actually trap my mosquitoes and see what's going on, and to be able to try to tell people, okay, there's a risk. A lot of people will say, do you feel more concerned or less concerned? And I try to say that I take it seriously.
Well,
I think that it's something serious.
It is very serious.
Right.
Gail, any other tips we want to send out to our young people getting ready for summer vacation?
I have quite a few summer tips. One of my pet peeves is sun safety. I see quite a few students come in with pretty bad sunburns. So to me, it's very important for parents and students to like to protect themselves. And the one thing you should do is sunblock. SPF 30 is usually the best, and also zinc. If it's a high percentage of zinc in the formula, that seems to work the best. The reason being, your body does need zinc, and it's a very thick coating, and it will protect your skin. And actually, all ethnicities do need some protection. It's not just pale, pasty people like myself, but African Americans also need to protect themselves as well as every other ethnicity. So it really is an important thing. And the other thing along with sun safety is hats. You look at the top of your head. If you're outside, the sun's beating directly down on your head. So you really should protect your head too by wearing a hat. Sunglasses, because the sun does affect your eyes. So you should be wearing sunglasses with a UVA, UVB polarized lens in them. And your children should be wearing sunglasses as well outside too. So sun safety is, like I said, is one of my pet peeves. Insect bites, aside from mosquitoes, ticks are out now, and unfortunately there's no real insect repellent that will protect you from ticks. So the best thing to do is clothing. And I know when it's hot out there, you don't want to be wearing long sleeves and long pants and everything. So you should be wearing, if you can't wear long sleeve clothing, long sleeve shirts and long pants, then the best thing to do is protect yourself as soon as you come inside and check your body from head to toe. And the best way to remove a tick is get as close to the skin with fine point tweezers and just pull it directly out. Don't use Vaseline or anything like that. And afterwards, wash it with an antibacterial soap like Dial. That's the best thing to do for ticks. And bee stings are another problem. If you're not allergic to bee stings, you don't have too much to worry about other than it is painful. And they actually now recommend don't apply ice to a bee sting. What they're recommending for some reason is actually either baking soda or Crest toothpaste in particular.
Really?
I found that on a website, and I get stung all the time, and I tried the Crest and it actually worked. So, and if you do happen to have some localized swelling, Benadryl is a wonderful treatment to take orally, not necessarily the Caladryl. And some other tips would be staying the heat when it gets really warm. Please protect your children and your pets. Don't leave them in the car for even a second. Take them out, even if it's a pain to bring them into the grocery store, wherever you're going in. If you're going in, just quickly pay for gas. Take your child out of the car. You don't know what will happen. You could trip and fall, something like that. So it really is important not to leave your child unattended in the car for any length of time, especially in this heat. Some other tips, there's a wonderful website, safetykids.org, which has a wonderful array of summer tips, and I would highly recommend parents going to that website. Some other things would be hydration.
Exactly.
When it's really warm, it's important to drink a lot of fluids. The kids don't necessarily need Gatorade or Powerade, that type of thing. They don't need the extra sugar and the electrolytes that are in that. They're fine with just the water and juice. Popsicles are another wonderful way, and kids love that to stay hydrated. So
Excellent.
those
Very
were some
good.
of the things I would highly recommend.
Terrific. Very, very good. Important to keep all those things in
Yes, it
mind
is.
so people have a safe and a happy summer vacation. Thank you so much, Gail, for coming and
My
sharing
pleasure.
that with us. And Priscilla, we thank you so much for all you've done in our schools and for helping to get the word out. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thank you. I appreciate the
Thank
time.
you. All right. Thank you very much, our guests
you.
today. And we want to thank all of you for being with us as well. We'll see you on our next Inside Scoop.
1 minute left.
Awesome.
No, that's
I
been
think
up.
that